Hi everyone, welcome to another video on YouTube channel of tutorialspedia.com. In this video, I will explain some of the performance tuning and traffic throttling options that are available in TIBCO BusinessWorks. I'll talk about MaxJob, flow limit, activation limit, and thread count, and I will explain all of these concepts with some example scenarios. Before I proceed with the more details, I will request you to please subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed before so that you are able to get latest videos from the channel when I upload. Let's first have some theoretical understanding of these concepts before we proceed with the example scenarios. The first property is MaxJob. The MaxJob property which we specify when deploying our archives through TIBCO administrator. It specifies maximum number of process instances that can reside in memory. So this property is very important and crucial for us to take into consideration whenever we are deploying our BusinessWorks services through administrator, because this will decide that how efficiently and how properly we are utilizing our memory resources. If we don't change it and we keep it default value is 0, which is for unlimited, which means that if we don't tune it, then any number of unlimited number of process instances which got created can reside in memory, which can potentially result in memory overutilization and performance degradation. The second property is flow limit, and this property defines that how much process instances can be created before state of the process starter changes to flow controlled. This is a very important property which will be acting as a throttling option for us, as it will stop creation of more process instances once we have reached to a certain defined value which we specify using this property. And with this way we can ensure that once we have a sufficient number of process instances got created and they are in the process of processing based on the MaxJob and the thread count property, then it will wait till the time we have sufficient number of process instances got completed their execution, and only then state of this process instance will change back from the flow control to the active state, and then it will be able to process and create new process instances. The third property is activation limit. This is a flag which is in the form of a checkbox, and it specifies that once a process instance is loaded into the memory, it must reside in memory till the time its execution is completed. So using this property, we can restrict that once for any particular process starter, if a certain job is running, then it should not get paged back into the hard disk till the time its execution is completed. The next one is thread count, and this thread count property, which by default when we deploy any process, any service in our TIBCO administrator, is set to 8. And this property specifies that how many instances can be running concurrently. So whatever we specify in MaxJob is specifying how many process instances can reside in the memory, but how many of those can run in parallel is specified through this thread count. So we should specify this thread count value also based on our CPU resources availability and how many number of instances we want to be executed in concurrent manner and in parallel. So specifying all these values in a proper way, in a more understandable way, and in a proper way will make sure that we are utilizing our memory resources as well as CPU resources in a proper way, and they are not underutilized and also not overutilized. Let's take some example cases and scenarios to understand these concepts more in a more better way. This is the first and the default scenario, which if we deploy any archive through administrator and we don't change anything for these properties, then this is how it will be. MaxJob will be 0, which means unlimited number of process instances can reside in memory. Flow limit is 0, which means that unlimited number of process instances can be created. And in this case, activation limit checkbox becomes meaningless because we haven't specified any paging, or we haven't restricted the number of process instances to be loaded into the memory. This is a default scenario, and ideally whenever we are working in our production environments, we should not go with this default setting. Rather, we should always take into consideration our memory resources, our CPU resources, and accordingly we should specify a max job flow limit as well as this checkbox for activation limit and our thread count value as well. Let's take this second scenario where we have better control compared to the previous one, as we have specified here flow limit n. This means that n number of process instances can be created before the process starter goes into the flow control state. But here again, max job is specified as 0, which means that since n number of instances can be created, so max job 0 means all of them can reside in memory at the same time. So in this case again, there is no paging of process instances because we haven't restricted number of instances that can go into the memory. And since we have no paging here, so use of activation limit is also ignored when we specify max job 0. Let's take the third scenario, which is more controlled scenario, where we have specified specific explicit value for max job as well as flow limit. And in this case, flow limit is n, which means n process instances can be created before changing the process starter to the flow control state. And since we specified max job as 1, this means one process instance is loaded into the memory at a time, and it's kept there until it completes its execution. How we specify this? By specifying the activation limit flag. So until it has completed its execution, it will remain in memory, so there is no paging. In this case, guarantees incoming events are processed in the sequential order in which they occur. But in ideal scenarios or in real production scenarios, we can specify a different value for max job and flow limit instead of specifying only one for max job. In most of the cases, it is recommended to use flow limit double to the value of the max job. For example, if you have flow limit specified as 20 as an example, then max job specify it as 10. So that 20 process instances can be created and 10 of them can reside in memory. But of course, the value that you specified for thread count also is also important, because if you keep 10 jobs in the max job as 10, this means 10 process instances will be in memory. But if you specify, just an example, if you specify thread count as only 2, this means concurrently or in parallel only 2 of them will be executed, so it will be taking more time for those process instances to get cleared from the memory. So we should be always careful about all of these parameters when we are deploying our services through TIBCO administrator. So that's it for today's video, and I hope that these concepts will help, these explanations will help you to clear the concepts. If you have any question, don't hesitate to uh, write in the comment section. I will try to respond to your question. And again, please do subscribe to the channel and get back to me through the comments if you have any questions. Thank you very much.